Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down week 2 waivers as well as some of the biggest surprises from week 1. If we believe they're here to stay, or maybe, just maybe, some more week 1 shenanigans. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. I hope you won all your fantasy matchups, but win or lose, time to keep our mind on the prize and get back to getting those lineups right ahead of week 2. We got one of the best in the business helping us do just that today. The one, the only Fantasy Life waiver wire expert, Kendall Valenzuela in the house. What's up, K-Dog?
What's up, Ian? We've got guys we got to look through. It was good for some people. It was bad for others. Sorry, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, like Devontae Smith, the alphas that we thought were going to come through for us. It's okay. Don't panic. It's week 1, but there were some guys that got hurt. So we do have to talk through waivers. It's a big week.
It was just a startling lack of offense overall, Kendall. I mean, it was a situation where, we started to see some spurts later in the day. Obviously, the Sunday night game was one of the better regular season games that we have had in recent memory. But there was a point there in the mid-afternoon just before the Packers were scoring where, the offenses that actually were doing freaking anything were completely unexpected, okay? The Colts, Steelers, and Jets for the majority of Sunday, Kendall, were the only teams that managed to score more than 23 points out there. I saw a great tweet from Mr. Hayden Winks over at Underdog. Until Sunday night, there was not a single skill position player who had scored more than 25 PPR points. So, again, wonky week and everything, but we got to remember, Kendall, it was just week 1.
Just week 1. Don't overreact. Even though we love Overreaction Monday on SiriusXM, we had some good tweets come our way. But yeah, Ian, it's fantasy football. It can never be easy. They can never like our fantasy teams, especially for the first week. So even if you start 0-1, hopefully you get the Monday Night Miracle tonight. But even if you start 0-1, don't worry. We're bringing you back. That's why they have Fantasy Life. That's why they have us. We're ready to go.
Just remember, everyone, if week 1 basically helped prove something you said this offseason correct, ball. Good for you. But if it proves something wrong, it was week 1. Who cares? It was just 1 week of action. So all Drake and joshing around aside, again, all the waiver wire stuff you could want today. And also, again, going through some of those performances, trying to figure out what is real and what is not. First, though, Kendall, time for some injury talk. It is time for our DraftKings opening lines. Recording this on Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so if you're listening to us later, first of all, thank you. Hope you're having a lovely day. But yeah, there certainly will be some updates that come out because, Kendall, really haven't gotten a ton of news yet today. MRI still going down for guys like George Kittle with his hamstring, Juwan Jennings with a shoulder, also a multitude of other tight end injuries that we will get into shortly. That said, we did get one big news item on Chiefs wide receiver Xavier Worthy that seems good. Obviously, hurt the shoulder, friendly fire from Travis Kelce. That was not cool, man, as someone who drafted a ton of Xavier Worthy this year. But we did get a quote from Andy Reid today saying, quote, "I know Xavier is the big question. He's rehabbing and working his shoulder. We'll just see where it goes day by day here. We'll see where we end up." Kendall, a lot of people have been saying, okay, Xavier Worthy's day to day. That sounds good. I'm not so sure. That's what I'm taking away from that quote. Again, it sounds like that we're not going to be looking at immediate surgery, which would be a good thing here. But assuming Worthy is going to be suiting up this week, even if he is going to be trying to play with a brace, wouldn't exactly be overly certain about that.
Yeah, he's already not like the biggest receiver. So playing with a brace already worries me just a little bit. And then to me, I'm going to prepare this week like we don't have Xavier Worthy. And then if the best case scenario happens and he's good to go, then I'm going to be really excited about it. But to me, Ian, the way we saw him go down, the way that people were talking before we even heard that quote from Andy Reid, it felt like it would be more of a week to week situation. And so I like to be the most positive person in the room usually, but this time I'm just going to make sure that my rosters are set and ready just in case he's not good to go. Because like you, I have a lot of Xavier Worthy, but you want to always be prepared for the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that he practices this week, he doesn't feel good, and actually he has to be out this week or for the next couple. And so we're going to talk about some guys that could step up in his absence, but I would just err on the side of caution. There are still receivers that you can get on the waiver wire. This is a good week for them, a better week for tight ends, not a good week if you need running backs, which we'll get to. But yeah, just be cautious with it and try to have a backup plan if he's not ready to go.
5 more long, cold weeks until Rashee Rice is going to be back in action. We'll continue to expect Hollywood Brown to lead the way in the meantime. More on him in just a little bit when we get into the week's top waiver wire ads. Otherwise, it was Juju Smith-Schuster and Tyquan Thornton in 3 wide receiver sets. I will say that was with Jalen Royals out, so I'm not exactly sure how long that knee injury is going to keep the rookie wide receiver on the Chiefs sideline, but he could be someone to step up in that kind of underneath intermediate range. So, yeah, if you are in, again, some of these leagues where you have the deeper benches, Jalen Royals, and especially deep pull, hopefully he is going to be healthy soon. Also, Kendall, again, mentioned the 49ers dealing with various issues, but really it does seem like a situation where these tight ends are the main ones we got to be looking out for. Brock Bowers with a knee issue. So NFL Network's Tom Pelissero said that Bowers is quote unquote fine and there are no concerns moving forward. But again, that could mean, hey, okay, it's not going to be a long-term issue. Still not exactly sure what's going to be going on for week 2. So the Raiders are going to be in a fun Monday night matchup here, I believe, against the Chargers for week 2. So a situation, Kendall, where we do not want to have question marks or a game time decision going into that. Again, we'll talk about some more tight ends later, but really this one should be simple for Brock Bowers fantasy managers. Sign Michael Mayer, because no, he's not going to be a top 3 tight end like Brock Bowers, but he's still very talented in his own right and would be someone that would be looking to crack into our top 12.
Well, especially with tight ends too. Like Michael Mayer was, last time I looked, he was 0% rostered, right? We weren't going into drafts and saying we love Michael Mayer because we have Brock Bowers there. There was no reason to draft him. But if you do have Brock, and like you said, Monday night games are so tricky, especially you've got the did double header start next week? Is that the next week for the Monday night games? So maybe you get one of the tight ends from the other game, right? That I can't even look that far ahead, Ian. I'm tired. We can't do that yet. But maybe you get one of those tight ends from that other game. But if you do have Brock, it's just way easier. Just go get Michael Mayer. We'll talk about his utilization. I was talking with Dwayne about him last night, and I asked him straight up. I was like, hey, is it worth this? Like, is it worth looking at Michael Mayer? And the short answer is just yes. So we'll go through his utilization. But again, just be careful. Pete Carroll, I love Pete Carroll, but we know how many times he's, not told the exact truth when we were talking about Seahawks and their start sits injury decisions. So they might be good today. And we're going to get news like Wednesday, Ian, when guys go back out to practice, there might be injuries that we just don't know about yet, where they go back out there and they say, wait, something's not right here. Something's going wrong. We heard about Jonathan Taylor getting hit in the neck, but it looks like he's okay. So just be careful again. And I think Brock Bowers, hopefully he's okay. But if not, we do have good tight ends on the waiver wire this week that you can go and get.
You mentioned, again, the Jonathan Taylor thing that I didn't even know was an issue as it was happening live. But yes, Shane Steichen has confirmed that he is good to go after taking that aforementioned hit to the neck. Drake London, day-to-day with that shoulder injury. Now, Kendall, Darnell Mooney was day-to-day last week with a shoulder injury, and he was, in fact, inactive for, again, that fun Falcons loss to the Buccaneers. So we'll see what happens with Drake London. Maybe a situation where Kyle Pitts continues to get force-fed the football. More on him a little bit later. The last injury I would want to bring up, though, is Evan Ingram dealing with a calf issue. So like George Kittle, it could be a multi-week injury. We don't know the severity just yet. I'm sure they're going to do their MRIs here. But I will say, Kendall, unlike someone like a George Kittle or Brock Bowers, there were some existing questions about Evan Ingram to begin with. I mean, his usage before that injury really wasn't going in a great direction. He was getting thrown the football when he was on the field. But man, if we're now looking at a hobbled Evan Ingram already playing less than, the amount of routes that we would like, it's a situation where even if he is going to try to gut this through, wouldn't mind waiting and seeing. And again, maybe going after some of these top tight ends on the waiver wire.
Yeah, again, it's too early to say if you have an Evan Ingram, like maybe you just go stream. But what we saw in that first week just wasn't good. We were hoping that maybe he would. It was the Joker role. We wanted every Broncos player to have the Joker role. Like it was one of those things, Ian, where we hoped someone would emerge. Maybe Sean Payton hates our fantasy teams. It kind of felt like that when we talk about the running backs too, but we can do that later. But yeah, Evan Ingram didn't look good in general. And then you have the calf injury, which the same thing, calf, right? Not hamstring. It was calf for him. Yeah, the calf for me, like especially with those guys, like you just worry a little bit more throughout the season. That's something that can linger. It's not one of those things where you say, oh, okay, now he's fully healed, he's ready to go back. So for Evan Ingram, I'm hoping he's good to go because again, if you were taking him, he was inside the top, top 10 tight ends when you were taking him off the board, depending on where his average draft position was. ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo were all different. But again, at least it's tight end, and at least we have this week because again, there are some guys that you can turn to if you really do need to start streaming. You put him on your bench, you hope and wait that he's going to be good to go, and hopefully we get a better version of Bo Nix too because that also just wasn't good in general. So you hope that he's good to go, and then you hope that Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos offense just starts to get a little bit better. But until then, we can go to the waiver wire. You might have someone else better streamable for week 2.
Bo Nix did wind up being easily PFF's lowest graded passer of the week. And frankly, I can't really disagree with that. Looked awful out there. Again, I am so incredibly lucky that the Broncos held on. That was one heck of a survivor pool sweat for me there, K-Dog. So again, guys, I know there's some injuries to worry about, but that said, the running backs seemingly made it out scot-free. We still have our starting 32 quarterbacks out there doing their things. We have seen much worse weeks. I am knocking on wood after I say that. So let's get into waiver wire goodness, guys. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. We just had a great NFL week 1, and week 2 is right around the corner. And accordingly, guys, I am teaming up with DraftKings Pick Six to give you a shot at their biggest bag ever. Right now, all DraftKings Pick Six customers can enter for free, hit your 6 picks, and just like that, you can land a share of $1 million or more in cash prizes. Here's the play. Pick more or less on 6 stats. Share it with your crew because more entries means a bigger bag. And if you nail all 6, you are in line for a cut of the cash. Head on over to the DraftKings Pick Six app and let's build the bag together. The crown is yours. All right, Kendall, we are breaking down our top 3 waiver wire additions ahead of week 2. You have been grinding these already, going back to Sunday night. Look at you getting ahead of the curve there. We appreciate, again, all your service, and everyone can find that article for free over at fantasylife.com. So kicking things off with really the star of Sunday, if you will, Danny Dimes, Indiana Jones, Vanilla Vic, whatever you want to call him, man. Daniel Jones was fantastic out there. So, Kendall, maybe not a great week 2 matchup against the Broncos, but things do lighten up after Titans, Rams, Raiders, Cardinals, Chargers, Titans to the end of October. And again, if there's one thing we know about fantasy football, we want quarterbacks who are going to run, and it sure seems like Daniel Jones is healthy enough to do just that.
Can you believe, Ian, in the year 2025 that we're talking about a revived Daniel Jones? Like Daniel Jones truthers, please step forward. I've met some of you. You've called into SiriusXM. They are real, Ian. Like I'm telling you, people were telling us that Sam Darnold was going to be the new, or that Daniel Jones was going to be the new Sam Darnold, that he was going to revive his career. He needed a new team, all of this stuff. And hey, for at least week 1, they can victory lap. Like you said, if you're in week 1 and you were saying that you can victory lap Daniel Jones for this week, especially. I saw this. He's 2% rostered right now, right? He's 5% rostered, excuse me. So you saw 22 of 29, 272, and 1 touchdown. And so it's one of those things where you look at on the ground as well. 7 carries, 26 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And that's what you want in a fantasy quarterback. If there's someone that you can pick up off the waiver wire, like Sam Darnold last season, like a Baker Mayfield last season, that's who you want. You can pick him up, you can put him on your bench, and you can be ready because, again, we don't have bye weeks that we have to worry about yet. But it's one of those things that when we do, Daniel Jones might not be a bad guy to have stashed already.
Looks like our internet feed with Kendall, again, just couldn't handle all the Daniel Jones hype, which honestly, again, I can fully understand with that. So again, guys, long story short here, it's an offense that we have seen Shane Steichen get the most out of lesser quarterbacks, I would say, if there are some lesser quarterbacks than Daniel Jones out there. Gardner Minshew, old man Joe Flacco, basically anyone other than Anthony Richardson has had success here. Obviously with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, we got options to go around with a steady run game, obviously led by Jonathan Taylor. So they had to replace some offensive line starters. That was one of my concerns. But man, at least for 1 week, even against a really good Dolphins pass rush, they held up fantastic and accordingly gave Daniel Jones clean pockets all day long. So the fact we're also getting some of these QB sneaks again from the 1 yard line really is a situation where Daniel Jones maybe does pull a 2022 out of his hat, sneak into that low end QB1 conversation. At a minimum, I do think we've seen enough for him through the air. Legit, guys. He had a honey hole cover 2 shot to Alec Pierce down the sideline. It was beautiful. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this happen. But again, a situation where I think he's done enough rushing to be able to at least separate himself in that tier of the Tua Tagovailoa, Matthew Staffords of the world. Again, don't want to lean on him this week. We don't have any buys. So to Kendall's point, we shouldn't be having to do that against the Broncos. But yes, certainly looking good moving forward. Now, Kendall, someone who I do think people should be looking to add, regardless of really how your wide receiver situation is, that is Chiefs wide receiver 1, I guess, right now. Hollywood Brown, Marquise maybe in your program. So again, a situation where he led the NFL in targets in week 1. Absolute madness. And as we talked about, Xavier Worthy, yes, considered day-to-day, but we will see exactly how true that is. So Kendall, Hollywood Brown, available in 75% of Yahoo leagues. How hard in the paint are you willing to go in the fab streets?
To be honest, pretty hard in the paint. Sorry I dropped out. It's the Daniel Jones talk. You know, the internet was like, I can't believe we're doing this. Like maybe it's a sign, Ian, that we shouldn't be picking him up. But for any receiver especially, like it's really hard to find guys that can have value at least, this early later on. So I do think that he's worthy of a, Xavier Worthy, but he is worthy of a waiver wire pickup. See what we did there? So I would spend some fab on him, especially if you're already down a little bit. Christian Kirk is banged up. We already got some receivers that are banged up a little bit right now anyways. And so if you have any bench depth that you can say, hey, I want to get a receiver out there that at least right now it's looking like he is going to be viable. Like if we really do see Xavier Worthy this week, then maybe it's a little bit different, but he's going to have a role there without Rashee Rice there, without potentially Xavier Worthy if the injury does get a little bit worse as the week goes on. In the year 2025 again, Ian, we're talking about Hollywood Brown. I love it.
And he's going up against some secondaries. Look, Eagles aren't going to be ideal this week. That is a good defense. Obviously, Dak and CD had some success, but I'm not going to call that a smash ball by any stretch of the imagination. But after that, we get the Giants, we get the Ravens, we get the Jaguars, the Lions, and the Raiders. Again, I'm not saying any of those necessarily layup matchups, but it is reasonable to believe that Patrick Mahomes and one or two pass catchers are going to be putting up numbers. Right now, Hollywood really is the only healthy one to be able to do that. So I got my way too early rankings already going on for week 2, guys. Nice. Those will be published on fantasylife.com tomorrow. Hollywood coming in as my wide receiver 38 right now. And again, it is a situation where I wouldn't be surprised if that does even nudge up here before the end of the week. So good stuff on Hollywood. Kendall, I did want to throw to you a couple other just wide receiver options. If Keon Coleman is somehow available in your guys' league, scoop him up in a moment, okay? Now, I know it's like, oh, my God, Ian, he's not. Apparently, he is available in 46% of Yahoo leagues. So, again, if even this helps one of you, please, for the love of God, pick up Keon Coleman, wide receiver 2 on the week. A lot of it did come in the fourth quarter. But, hey, again, boom or bust wide receiver 3 when your quarterback is Josh Allen. It would make sense if you boom more than you bust. Maybe a bigger one, Kendall, is going to be Alec Ayo Manor there for the Titans. He actually did go ahead and lead the week in unrealized air yards. 120 of them, everyone. So it's a situation again where, that is a fancy way of basically saying how long were the incomplete targets in the air. Okay. So again, my producer Swing is standing up the 50-yard line. I throw him an incomplete target from the goal line. That's 50 unrealized air yards. Alec Ayo Manor had more of those than anyone else last week. So again, a situation. Calvin Ridley, number 1 in Tennessee. We all understand that. But if Cam Ward can find his footing at some point this year, you would like to think there could be a number 2. And right now, Alec does profile as that guy. Kendall, I did want to ask you about, again, another wide receiver who just could be, again, available on some in these deeper leagues. Kayshon Boutte had the 4th most air yards, and a fun stat from Alfredo Brown, friend in the industry, has now finished as a top 18 fantasy wide receiver in 3 of his last 4 games alongside Drake May. Kayshon Boutte, Kendall, got some good team name possibilities there too. Why not?
I mean, I was going to say, like, if you can change your team name because of him, like, you might as well pick him up. Again, I'm especially if you're in these deeper leagues and he's available, like, if Drake May continues, hopefully that we say, take a step forward, we see a little bit better things out of Drake May and just the Patriots offense as a whole, I think it's okay. Like, if Stephon Diggs, I was a little bit higher on him coming into the season, just thinking, hey, Stephon Diggs, he can really step up, do some good things for this team, be a veteran presence. But, it's always worth adding someone that we see, especially in the utilization, be used in week 1 like we did. Things could happen. If guys go down with injuries, like, he could really play a more prominent role. So there's no reason to not spend a little fab on him. I wouldn't go crazy, but unless you need a new team name, like you said, go crazy. But other than that, it's still good to see receivers that you can pick up this early.
Only other 2 names I would mention, Calvin Austin, 70 yards and a touchdown with Roman Wilson clearly out of the picture in Pittsburgh. And also, if he happens to be available, Cedric Tillman, guys, keeps on putting up big numbers, even alongside Jerry Jeudy. We've now essentially seen 5 full games from Cedric Tillman ever since that Amari Cooper trade last year. And his finishes in PPR points, wide receiver 15, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 50, 1 dud. But hey, before Monday Night Football this week, wide receiver 18 once again. So please, Kevin Stefanski, keep Joe Flacco under center. Things can get rough in a hurry in Cleveland if not. But again, for the time being, Kendall, Tillman is in a good position. So just to kind of, again, sum up these wide receivers real quick. Number 1, if he's somehow available, Keon Coleman. Then I would say Hollywood Brown. Then I'd probably say Cedric Tillman, Alec Ayo Manor, Kayshon Boutte. They're close. Calvin Austin and last. That sound about right to you, Kendall?
Yeah. And then if you want to flyer on Tesla, they said that they're going to be using him maybe a little bit more. I don't, it's one of those guys where it's like a fun training camp, darling and stuff like that. But just in case, if they're actually telling the truth and he does get a little bit more, he's not startable right now. He's not. People might look at the touchdown and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. He's going to get that every time. He's not. But if you do have a deep league and you have a reason, some need to stash someone, I think Isaac Tesla, like you said, Ian, though, very bottom of that list.
I hope he is like this year's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, though. Just keeps on scoring touchdowns with this usage that we can't trust. It drives fantasy people like Dwayne absolutely insane. But you know what? Sometimes just ballers are going to ball. Isaac Tesla's certainly looking like one. So good shout there, K-Dog. Last, again, main waiver claim is going to be a running back this time. Dylan Sampson, Browns, RB1, potentially. Sure, look like that in week one. Now, we do have the Quinshon Judkins situation, which actually could be not settled up, but at least, could have him on the field by this week. Per ESPN's Adam Schefter, quote, Judkins is scheduled to meet with the NFL this week about its investigation, but there's a real possibility and an even likelihood, according to one source, that he will make his NFL debut next Sunday at Baltimore. So again, Kendall, that's per one source. I know that you actually got to interview Zach Jackson on SiriusXM a few weeks ago, and he was actually, very pessimistic about Judkins playing in September, period. So I will say, even if Judkins is going to be active, no, we cannot trust this guy to start. But hey, even once he is, maybe Dylan Sampson still could be an answer, particularly on pass downs.
Yeah, he took away. I thought Jerome Ford would have a little bit more of a role, even like just for 1 week, if it was without Quinshon Judkins, and that just wasn't the case. It was really Dylan Sampson's show. So if for whatever reason he is out there, you want to go and get him, because I do think he could still have value. When you mentioned, we talked with Zach Jackson from The Athletic just like a few weeks ago, and he was saying that Quinshon Judkins, when he is ready to go, when they do get past the legal stuff and they do sign him, which they did over the weekend, he was still saying that he doesn't expect to see him until after September, like you said, Ian. So we can we can look at Quinshon Judkins managers and we can say, well, if he's ready to go this week, how much of the playbook does he know? How much of game shape is he in? He didn't play in the preseason. He didn't play in training camp. And I think for any rookie, no matter how good you are, you need that. Like, we need to see that because it helps them get off to quicker starts. And so I think it's going to take some time to acclimate with the team, get involved, get in there. When he does, we'll be excited about it. But it's kind of until then, we have to be a little bit cautious.
And that's my whole point, too. He's been away from the team. This isn't a hold-in where the dude's still there in meetings in a situation where it's like, and Ezekiel Elliott back in the day where it's like, oh, yeah, of course the second Zeke is ready to go. He's going to be out there getting his 20-plus touches per game. He's a rookie who hasn't been around the team for, over a month, again, before this actually went down. So Quinshon Judkins, again, if you have him on your roster, congratulations. That's fantastic. And if he does manage to avoid suspension, I could see him taking over this backfield sooner rather than later. But that said, we have seen Stefanski continue to use multiple running backs really throughout the duration of his time in Cleveland, whether it was Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, or even last year, Jerome Ford and guys like Pierre Strong, Deontay Foreman. I do think we'll continue to see two running backs involved. And as nice as week one was, guys, I'm still not exactly expecting the Joe Flacco-led Browns to be lighting up the scoreboard each and every week out there. So a lot of mouths to feed in an offense that, again, probably doesn't have the highest scoring ceiling. Hey, for now, Sampson could be a flex-worthy play. Again, he caught 8 passes for 64 yards in week one. That's great. They're going up against the Ravens defense last week that, again, is so feisty along the line of scrimmage. I do think you will see teams kind of deploy this approach where you are, checking the ball down more. Saw Josh Allen, again, target James Cook and Ty Johnson plenty last night with a lot of success there. So Dylan Sampson, for now, someone who's going to be in that low-end RB3 mix for me this week if Judkins is out of the situation. But yeah, not a bad guy to have on your bench because, hey, Kendall, if Judkins does get suspended, then we got Sampson probably sitting there as an RB3 for us.
Exactly. That's the one thing. I like to be an optimistic person. Maybe we do get Quinshon Judkins back this week, but again, I'm going to be cautious. Quinshon Judkins managers probably didn't draft Dylan Sampson and vice versa. So if you have Dylan Sampson for whatever reason, also don't give him up so easily. I think that some people might look around at their running back room and say, I'm going to try and be in a buy situation because some of their RB2s just didn't show up. If you're, a Kenneth Walker manager, Jaylen Warren was okay, but you're a little bit nervous about that. So just hang on to him. Be patient. It was week one. We'll see if Quinshon Judkins is out there, but I would be pretty surprised. And if he was out there, how good could he look? That's the other thing, is how good is he going to be? I can't imagine we put him in anywhere. It'd be hard, right, Ian, to start him if he's out there, to be in a startable position.
No, not this week. I'm not going to be starting Judkins pretty much under any circumstances, at least for this week. Because, I think if anything, it'd be a package of plays, get him a few carries, and a tough matchup with an offense not exactly expected to be scoring many points. So I just think it's kind of wild, Kendall. Can you imagine going back 5 years and telling yourself, hey, by the way, in 2025, you are going to be praying that 40-year-old Joe Flacco can hold on to this job because all of our fantasy hopes and dreams are relying on that. So again, just an incredible story that continues to keep on keeping on. Shout shout out to Mr. Elite for, again, helping make many of our fantasy dreams come true, at least at this point. So good stuff there. Again, quick recap, everyone. Our main quarterback out of the week is going to be Daniel Jones for that dual threat goodness. We are hopeful that he's going to have, again, better matchups after this Broncos game coming up in week 2. At running back, it is going to be Dylan Sampson. Just keep an eye on the Quinshon Judkins situation. Wide receiver, Hollywood Brown, Keon Coleman, easy top 2. We understand Keon is probably not available in your league. Cedric Tillman, another Brown. What could go wrong? Keyshawn Boutte, Alec Ayomanor would be the next best guys. And as Kendall also mentioned, Isaac Tesla, another good option in deeper leagues. Any other non-tight end waiver stuff you want to get off your chest, Kendall?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like Quentin Johnston, I think we mentioned a little bit. We're going to go through some tight ends. Calvin Austin. Yeah, I think we hit all the guys that could be potential. If you want to mention Aaron Rodgers just to give him his flowers, I put him at the very end of my waiver wire article and I said, I can't believe it either in parentheses. So I can't believe it either, but maybe someone that you just want to pay attention to.
4 touchdowns. I will say the 4.6 yard average target depth, although he did have a couple okay throws downfield, I'm just not convinced that this offense is going to be grooving like it was in week 1. Very fun moment for the Steelers. Rodgers got the revenge game win. That's great. And I'm not sitting here and saying Rodgers is completely washed as a passer, but just in terms of him being someone we can actually rely on in fantasy land, I just think there are much better options like a Daniel Jones of the world, which again is kind of wild to be preferring Daniel Jones over Aaron Rodgers if that is the world we live in at this moment. So more on Quentin Johnston, again, some of the biggest week 1 Fugazis or reels here in a little bit. First though, Kendall, let's get into this tight end room because again, we have all sorts of injuries going on here. Time for our tight end corner. Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, all banged up. So you, a scholar, might have to go to the waiver wire and find someone to start in their place. And that's what K-Dog and I are here to help you with. So Kendall, we got 5 names. Browns, tight end 2, basically their starting slot receiver, Harold Fannin. Saints, tight end 1, every down baller. I'm saying that because I drafted a lot of them in best ball. Please don't come crashing back to earth. Juwan Johnson. We got Brock Bowers backup, Michael Mayer. Jaguars, tight end 1, Bretton Strange, who low-key led the team in receiving. And then also Jets, tight end 1, Mason Taylor. So how would you rank these 5, Kendall, in terms of, again, who you want to be actively starting here in week 2?
Yeah, active. If it's in terms of actively starting, I think Juwan Johnson would be towards the top, and then Brenton Strange. Then I would probably, depending on what news we get with Brock Bowers, look at Michael Mayer, Harold Fannin, Mason Taylor. Like that's how I would look at it, because if you need someone to start immediately, it's a little bit tough. And my favorite, someone that I had in the pre-waiver wire article run for week 1, was Harold Fannin Jr. Like he is my favorite guy. Shout out to Zach Jackson from The Athletic. He's my favorite guy because he told us we need to be paying more attention to this tight end, this rookie tight end. He said that once Deontay Johnson was gone from that team, it pretty much solidified that they want to have a role for this rookie. And so when I'm looking at him, I'm making sure that at least in my deeper formats that I have a place for him. If you're in, shorter, smaller leagues, it's a little bit more difficult because he's just not going to have the same value. He's someone that you're going to have to wait on. But we always like to be a week or two early, Ian, especially to the waiver wire. So when we start going into bye weeks, like you want to be a week or two early. You don't want to be going into, week 6 and saying, well, this is the week I need a quarterback. Hopefully you already have that guy on your roster. So it's the same thing for tight ends, especially if you're in tight end premium. He's going to be someone that they're picking up, but he's not startable right now. But I think that's how I would label him out if I had to pick.
I think you're spot on again with the Fannin analysis, because the way they were using him, it really was a plan, and it was something that we were hoping to see after the preseason usage, and it did keep on keeping on. Overall, guys, he had 29 snaps as a legit inline tight end. They're not afraid to use him there. Also 16 in the slot, 6 out wide, even 3 in the backfield, and yes, a wildcat snap. The man was doing a lot of that at Bowling Green, and again, Stefanski apparently has a true, plan in place for the electric rookie Harold Fannin. So, hey, it is a situation where, no, like Kendall said, not exactly going on our way to start him right now, but caught 7 of 9 targets for 63 yards. He looked good in terms of getting open. And again, as long as Joe Flacco is under center, which continues to be ridiculous to say out loud, we can feel pretty good about Harold Fannin out there. So I'm with you, Kendall. If I am not in dire need for a tight end, I have, a Tucker Kraft or a Mark Andrews, someone that I am happy enough to start. Harold Fannin would be my bench call. That said, if I do have an Evan Ingram and I need to actually try to win my week 2 matchup and start someone, how about some Juwan Johnson here? Okay. He caught 8 8 of 11 targets, 76 yards, nearly scored the game-winning touchdown. I know some Saints fan, it wouldn't have been game-winning, would have been game-tying touchdown there at the end. It was in his hands, also in triple coverage, a bunch of finely tuned athletic machines trying to rip the ball out. So I'm not going to be too critical here of Juwan. That said, Kendall, he played all but one snap in this football game. Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau continued to be out of the picture for at least the first 4 weeks of the season on IR. I mean, Juwan Johnson, it is the Saints, so similar to Browns, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and assume that, oh, Kamara, Olave, Juwan Johnson, all these guys are going to be balling out in New Orleans, but this is a every down tight end who we know is a good receiver. Like, that should be enough.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that he had the most encouraging fantasy performance. I think we can say that at least. Like he was exciting. And I know you said that you had a lot of him like in best ball, but when you followed the money, they threw $30 million at him. And I think that the Saints kind of looked at that and the coaching staff also looked at that and they said, hey, let's get Juwan Johnson involved and keep him involved. So 8 for 76 on 11 targets. And like I said, he was so encouraging. So that's why I said he's at the top of my waiver wire list if you need someone to start immediately. Like he is someone that you can go in and say, all right, besides Brendan Strange, I can start this guy if I pick him up. Is there going to be down weeks? Of course, it's the Saints. Like it's just kind of a gross offense. But I did follow the money with this one, Ian, and I do have a good amount, small amount, I will say, of Juwan Johnson, just because $30 million, we knew that Taysom Hill wasn't really going to be involved anymore. So it's just one of those things where if you need a startable tight end, especially like if this Kittle news is a worst case scenario, if this Evan Ingram news is a worst case scenario, Juwan Johnson's probably the guy you want to go out and get.
Hey, follow the money for Juwan Johnson. It's working out great. Also, follow the money on Mike Gesicki. I will say, Kendall, that's not working out as great right now, so I will take the slight L on that for now. Season's not over, though. America loves a comeback. Come on, Big Mike. But yes, Juwan Johnson firmly is our top waiver tight end if you're going to need a starter for week 2. That said, if we are living in a scenario, Kendall, where Brock Bowers is going to be missing this game, Juwan Johnson versus Michael Mayer straight up is interesting. I think I would lean Juwan Johnson, but again, Raiders play Monday night. So I really do think if you guys are dealing with Brock Bowers, go ahead and just pick up Mayer, have him on your bench. I don't think it's going to be the steepest competition on the waiver wire. I would be shocked if you have to use a meaningful amount of fab here. But again, 35th overall pick in 2023 for a reason. He had over 2,000 receiving yards and 18 touchdowns at Notre Dame, which has a decent argument as tight end U. I mean, it is one of these situations, Kendall, where I was mentioning this to Dwayne on our show last night. It's not a 1-for-1 because the ages are flip-flop in this situation, but it kind of reminds me of Zach Ertz and early career of Dallas Goedert, where we loved Zach Ertz at that point in time, top 5 tight end. But when Ertz was out, we were actually hyped up to play Dallas Goedert. I feel like that's what Michael Mayer could be here.
I feel like it is too. And you're right. If you had to go 1-for-1, again, Juwan Johnson, but Mayer is close, right? Mayer is someone that if you're going into the waiver wire this week and you really desperately need a tight end, make sure you're putting multiple bids in, right? And then just dropping the same player. So if you miss out on a Brendan Strange, a Juwan Johnson at the top, put another bid in, different amount of money if you're doing fab, right? You don't want to spend, I think, the same amount of money. In my opinion, you could get Michael Mayer for cheaper, but put a bid in for, another tight end. Don't always just go with a 1-for-1. And if you lose out, you're like, oh, I lost. There's other outs that you can go and get. I think Michael Mayer, especially when we saw him and the utilization that Dwayne sent me once Brock Bowers was out, it was good. He had a 70% route participation, 30% of the targets, 7.8 total PPR points. So it was all there. I do get a little bit worried that what Pete Carroll's really going to do if Brock Bowers is out. And he was saying hey, he should be good to go. Brock Bowers was saying, oh, I should be good to go too. But I do think that if you miss out on one of the other guys that you could start immediately, Michael Mayer is a really good second option for you.
I did love Pete Carroll's quote about Michael Mayer and asked about him being a number 2 tight end. Pete Carroll said, he ain't a number 2 tight end. We got ones over here. So again, ever the hype man, Pete Carroll. Love having Pete back in the NFL. Brendan Strange, Kendall, again, have more receiving yards than Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr., and Diami Brown out there. He was Liam Cohen's number 1, at least for a week. And he had a good enough utilization to believe that, again, we could get some of these solid games. So 4 catches, 59 yards, 0 touchdowns on 4 targets, 70% route rate. That's good. That said, again, I would expect far more weeks than not Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter to be the lead target getters. It's kind of similar to what we saw with Liam Cohen's last offense, where it was Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then Cade Otton as a distant third. Now, Brendan Strange, I do think is a better overall prospect, a better athlete than someone like Cade Otton. So I'm open to the idea of him making more out of his opportunities. But Brendan Strange, Kendall, again, fine if you need him, okay. but not someone I'm going to be ranking inside my top 15 or feeling too good about going to war with.
Yeah, streamable. I think that's all we can describe him as, which isn't bad. We also need, hello, Trevor Lawrence. Did he not get our fantasy life, ranks in his hand? Ian, what are we doing? Can Trevor Lawrence please stand up? Because it's going to suck if we just have to say, all right, well, this guy sucks. And I know some people watching are like, we've been trying to tell you this for a year. And it's like, we just had to go back to him. I just thought that he would be better. So hopefully Trevor Lawrence is a guy that gets better. But like you said, I mean, he caught 4 passes, 59 yards. I know people look and say, well, the backup tight end scored a touchdown. And it's like, okay, that's fine. We're not telling you to go get Munt. We're not telling you to go get any other tight end that scored kind of fluky touchdowns. Noah Fant. I'm sorry. I know you love Noah Fant, but I can't do it, Ian. He wasn't written up today. But yeah, he's a streamable tight end. Again, he's someone that if you need someone to just start immediately and you have that kind of problem going into week 2, then maybe you take a little bit longer look at him. But the Jaguars on the road, I think against a bad Bengals defense, you could have worse starts, I think, for week 2.
Again, distant fifth behind Brenton Strange, behind Michael Mayer, Juwan Johnson, Harold Fannin, would be Jets rookie tight end Mason Taylor. But it is interesting that he had an 84% route rate in week 1. That is rare to see. And given the fact that he was banged up throughout summer training camp, wouldn't have been the most surprising thing to see him ease a bit into action. So this is a guy, obviously, with the bloodlines going back to Jason Taylor. Remember that storyline all throughout draft season. Yeah. So again, I'm not doubting what Mason Taylor can do out here potentially, eventually, Kendall. That said, it's an offense where, man, even in like a shootout environment, what a great game that was between the Steelers and Jets. We still barely saw Justin Fields actually dropping back to pass. So again, cool every down roll for Mason Taylor, but an every down roll for the New York Jets, not quite the same as it is elsewhere.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where cool story, if anyone didn't know, he's got NFL in his blood. And so maybe that makes people like him a little bit more. I do think long term, though, like he has good long term upside, right? Again, another guy where I'm not necessarily recommending people just go out, spend a ton of money, get him on your team, unless you have, really, even in deeper formats, I didn't really see him go. So it's just one of those guys that does have long term potential, especially if we continue to see Justin Fields ball out a little bit. This offense continues to look good, on the ground, through the air a little bit more. But yeah, for now, I'm kind of holding on him. Cool story though. Love him.
Very cool story. So to recap, everyone, number 1 tight end ad of the week for just, hey, you want the best possible long-term option. That is going to be Harold Fannin. If you just need a streamer start, okay, you have George Kittle, you have Evan Ingram, and you need someone to feel good about, we will be going with Juwan Johnson in that case. If you have Brock Bowers and you're worried about it, again, late. It is the last Monday night game too. I do think Michael Mayer is going to be your guy. Cade Otton plays earlier, so worst case, maybe you can go get him still. But again, I would prefer Michael Mayer if Brock Bowers is out to even someone like Cade Otton. Brenton Strange would be number 4 on this list, and then a distant 5th, Mason Taylor. You good with tight ends, Kendall?
Yep, all good there.
Cool. All good there. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into some panic meters, some bad week 1 performances. First, though, a quick shout out to our friends over at Xfinity. To Xfinity and beyond, we are introducing the 5-year price guarantee from Xfinity. 1 internet price, 5 years guaranteed. Because, guys, life is unpredictable, but the price of your internet should not be. Get a reliable price for a reliable connection. And hey, when they say all in, we really mean all in. You get Wi-Fi equipment and unlimited data included. And guys, again, change is always happening. RB1 seemingly never repeat. 2030's fantasy wide receiver 1 may not even be in college yet, but no matter what changes in 5 years, the price of your internet will stay the same. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Note that restrictions do apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees are extra and subject to change. Good stuff on the waiver wire, K-Dog. And again, we invite all you guys to check out Kendall's very much free article at fantasylife.com for any additional questions on waiver wire stuff. But let's break down some of the happenings from week 1, starting off with some bad stuff, okay? Bad performances, and we now got to figure out if they were, again, just a blip on the radar, week 1 shenanigans, or perhaps a sign of things to come. So, Kendall, first one to ask you about Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. I mean, only had 24 minutes worth of time possession. They really, I think if they played this game 10 times, they should have lost lost about 9 of them. Okay. The Browns missed a chip shot field goal and an extra point, only ended up losing by 1 point. So Kendall, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they had 7 net yards of offense in the entirety of the second half. Again, I have not seen Joe Burrow and company look so out of sorts really ever since he was playing through that calf injury a couple years ago. So at the same time, Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, Denzel Ward, there's some dogs on that Cleveland Browns defense. Shout out dog pound, pun intended, everyone. But yeah, what is your panic meter concern here for the Cincinnati Bengals offense, Kendall?
1, maybe a 2 if you really want to get into it. Like if we had to give up Joe Burrow and the Bengals like winning this game every single time for the first 2 weeks of the year, we know that they're really bad for the first 2 weeks to get a fantasy win. Like I would have done that. But Joe Burrow, yeah, that was brutal. What, 8.82 fantasy points when we're looking at ESPN scoring. The fun fact here is that for his career, Burrow has never exceeded 18.64 fantasy points in week 1 games. But he has exceeded that number in 34 of his other 64 regular season contests. So I'm not worried here, Ian. We know it's the Bengals. We know that if you have Joe Burrow, if you have Jamar Chase, if you have T. Higgins, it wasn't great. I had all 3 in some places, and it just wasn't a great feeling. But we live and we move on. We know that Jamar Chase, even last season, week 1, started off slow. And then how did it end up? So I would put it like at a 1, maybe even a 0, because we know that this Bengals team's just going to get going.
Hey, if they can't get anything done in the Battle of the Cats, against the Jaguars this weekend, okay, maybe we can reassess. But I, again, think this will be something that we really aren't too worried about. And Joe Burrow and company aren't even worried about it. They said what I thought was honestly correct. They were losing these sorts of games last year, so good on them for coming out with the W at the end of the day. So I think, honestly, if anything, my takeaway here, Kendall, is that this Browns defense could be a legit juggernaut, okay? We are only 1 year removed from seeing them work as the best group in the league back in 2023 in terms of EPA allowed per play. And again, for them to do that to Cincinnati, I'm not just going to say it was a bad day for Joe Burrow and company. Myles Garrett and them really were making it tough on them. So similar sentiment for the Lions, Kendall, because again, for me, it was like, okay, I'm not going to completely pretend like Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs are useless in fantasy. My bigger takeaway is like, man, Browns and Packers defenses, like these might be 2 looming giants that we just didn't necessarily expect this from.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where, again, we love overreacting and we say, oh, maybe because Ben Johnson left, like everything's going to be bad for the Lions. No, let's not freak out. Maybe if we're 6 weeks from now and it's still happening, yeah, we can get a little bit worried. But for both of these teams, we always know the Bengals start slow. Even if they did win this game, even if they did play in the preseason, we kind of knew that it probably wasn't going to be their best outing anyways. Same for the Lions. They're just getting used to everything. So don't freak out. 6 weeks from now, Ian, maybe like 5, then we can come back here and say, whoops, yeah, maybe we should be freaking out, but just not now.
Everyone keep your composure. Maybe not, though, for our next one, Kendall, is going to be Kenneth Walker, your Seattle Seahawks RB1, RB2. I don't know. It seems like Zach Charbonnet is going to be the lead dog for now. So snap-wise, it was charged 59%. Kenneth Walker just 41%. Now, Walker did have 13 total opportunities to 12 for Charbonnet, so it wasn't like he was benched or anything like that. But we got a quote from Mike McDonald after the game saying there's going to be more opportunities for both of them moving forward. I don't love that, Kendall. They're both stuck in RB3 land right now. I would have rather one of them just emerge as the lead guy. Right now, I'm really not going to feel great about starting either of them.
I think eventually my take is that eventually one of them does become the lead, and I think eventually it does become Zach Charbonnet. It's just one of those things where I think Kenneth Walker coming into the season was still banged up. I know that you never want to rest on guys that have had injury history in the past, but the 6 games last season, he was already injured during training camp and preseason. So I looked at my exposure. I took more Zach Charbonnet than I did Kenneth Walker this season. And it was kind of scary. And I was like, oh, this could not work out. But I think eventually, like when I watched that game back in, like Kenneth Walker didn't have the burst or the juice that we usually see. And so that can come back, right? It's just the first game of the season. We don't want to overreact, but he didn't look like the same player. And so I kind of look back and I think, okay, maybe he's still a little bit injured, right? And he's still healing, getting back from that. But Zach Charbonnet led the Seahawks with both carries, rushing yards. And so it's a backfield to monitor, but both of them, Zach Charbonnet was so expensive to take in drafts. People were drafting him like I was and saying, well, hopefully he just becomes the lead back. He wasn't necessarily a handcuff because I think at one point I turned and I just said, well, he's going to have standalone value at some point this season, whether it's Kenneth Walker going down or whether it's him just looking better. And so it's unfortunate for Kenneth Walker managers. And I do think that there's still hope. Again, it's just week 1. We're overreacting to everything we saw because Kenneth Walker has the profile, he has the talent, he has the ability and the offense to be a breakout player, but it's just how he looks if he stays healthy and he gets that burst back. That's the one thing that I'm worried about.
For the love of God, don't sell ridiculously low on the guy, and definitely don't consider putting him on the waiver wire. And, I'm sure you aren't, but again, can't feel good about starting him at least for a week too. I would not say the same about Omari and Hampton. That said, Kendall, we did get a quote from Jim Harbaugh recently saying that Najee Harris was capped at 12 snaps in week 1, and that his workload could change in week 2. So that would be my bigger concern here for Omari and Hampton, because I don't care about the yards per carry, guys, okay? Bijan, freaking Kenneth Walker himself, Genty, Bucky, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor. None of these guys average over 4 yards per carry, okay? I know King Henry, basically doubled all that because he is the king after all. But Omarion Hampton, in terms of the just efficiency against a tough Chiefs defense led by Chris Jones, I'm not worried about that. We want usage, and he had that in spades. 81% snap rate, the only running backs with a higher snap rate so far in week 1. Pollard, Jacobs, Genty, Robinson, and Kamara. Elite stuff from Hampton. That said, Najee could be on the way. So, Kendall, I would say with Hampton, again, it's not a situation where in week 2 I'm overly worried, but he was a guy where we had kind of drafted closer to an RB1. We ranked him in week 1, though, as more of this, mid-tier, low-end RB2. I'm not willing to move him up into the top 12 after what we saw, particularly with Najee's workload improving, but I'm also not, again, sounding the alarms.
No, I wouldn't sound the alarms. Like you saw Marshawn Lynch over there talking to him after he made, just rookie mistakes, right? It happens. And so I think we were drafting, and why he got up to draft so high in his ADP was because of the weird Najee Harris experience that we were going through, right? There were thoughts that he wouldn't start the season. He'd start the season on IR. And at that point, it's like, okay, it's full go Omari and Hampton. And I still believe that it is, because like you said, the utilization, this is why we love the utilization report, everything that Dwayne does at fantasylife.com, because it paints a different story. If you're just looking at the box score, you're going to be worried. If you're just looking at the fantasy points scored, you're going to be worried. But it's one of those things where, yeah, like you said, you can't necessarily, our rankings, he's not a top 10 running back, going into week in and week out, but you just have to be patient. He's still a rookie. We can have high hopes for rookies, and we had some for week 1, and some of them didn't deliver. Emeka Egbuka delivered for us, but an Omari and Hampton and Ashton Genty, it takes some time. And I think you just can't freak out with these rookies, especially for some of them. It might take halfway through the season. You just have to be patient with them. And then once you're patient, hopefully it pays off towards the middle back half of the year. And for Omari and Hampton, it's not going to take that long. I'm not even putting that out into the universe, Ian. It's not going to take that long. He's going to be fine.
And again, yards per carry is already a stat that can be so much more dependent on your offensive line, your play calling, and your quarterback. And it's a 1-week sample size. So speaking of Genty, this dude, I know he only had 38 rushing yards in week 1, 38 rushing yards, but 44 rushing yards after contact, Kendall. That's going to freaking blow your mind when you really think about it. So again, still very much highly touted prospects for a reason. I do think far better days will be ahead. Similar sentiment for our next wide receiver, A.J. Brown. I hope people aren't overly freaking out. It was disappointing to have to get that Thursday night goose egg. You're all excited for the fantasy season to start. You have the weather delay, and then you finally get the pity target with under 2 minutes left in the game and everything. But I will say, I do wonder exactly how much that hamstring could have still been bothering him. Kendall, he's had an extra long week to get right again for the Super Bowl rematch against the Chiefs. So just remember, we've seen this before. In the playoffs last year, he had 1 catch for 10 yards in their first game, 2 for 14 the next game. What did he do in the NFC Championship and Super Bowl? He balled out because he is A.J. freaking Brown. So I'm not concerned. Kendall, still very much a wide receiver 1 for me. Yeah, I didn't love the performance. No one did in week 1. But again, these things happen. It was just 1 week. AJB, still a baller.
Just not a great way to start the weekend, Ian. It was the same thing with Xavier Worthy on a Friday night. Like, dang, could we have a worse buzzkill than those two going up and just giving your fantasy teams nothing? But I will say I'm not overly worried. Now, I will be overly worried if it continues to happen and we say, okay, is he injured? What's going on? Because he was a non-factor. It almost felt rude that he got that 1 target at the end. I almost would have rather him not gotten anything and just walked away from it. But I will say one thing I did look up, so one reception for the 8 yards, 1.8 fantasy points. Dallas played zone coverage on 85.7% of Jalen Hurts' dropbacks. So when we look at that, forces the ball underneath. We kind of saw that a little bit in that game. And so for me, I'm not worried about A.J. Brown. You don't want to sell him either. I got some questions on that too. Guys, don't sell players that just had bad games. You're going to get nothing from them. Don't use bait like Jordan Addison. I heard people, wanting to trade Jordan Addison for maybe some guys. And maybe that gets a little bit different, but just don't sell guys when they're low like this. When they have 1 fantasy point, 2 fantasy points, you're not going to get the best value out of them. And also it's week 1, Ian. I don't know how many times we can say it, but don't freak out. A.J. Brown, though, in that matchup, it was brutal. And hopefully he reads his book at halftime. He reads his book this weekend. I don't know what he needs to do, but more targets, please. That's all we need.
Again, feeling good about A.J. Brown this week against the Chiefs. We saw a strategy last year, load up against Saquon, and good luck covering these wide receivers downfield. That said, Kendall, I am sounding the panic alarms for Tyreek Hill. I do not have him ranked inside my top 24 this next week. This Dolphins team seems like they're on the verge of a crash out. I mean, Mike McDaniel seems like he's about ready to start pointing fingers in some of these press conference quotes. I mean, the vibes are horrible this entire offseason. I almost wonder if we were just looking too far into it. Now I'm wondering if we didn't look far enough into it. So again, there's a situation where, I mean, if we're in the second quarter next week, Kendall, and Tyreek just walks off the field, would you even be that surprised? I wouldn't. I do not want to start this guy if I can at all help it. Again, can't completely say under no circumstances I'm still going to have him as a top 30 wide receiver. But at this point, I'm just waking up and praying that they trade this guy back to the Chiefs.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, well, the seat is hot for, I think, Mike McDaniel, right? He's someone that I did on SiriusXM today and said overreaction. He's the first head coach fired. And I don't even think that's an overreaction. Like, this team looks so bad. And the vibes, Ian, were bad throughout the season, the off season. It was just one thing after another where it was like Tua saying that, Tyreek Hill just needs to, help his attitude and all this stuff. And then Tyreek Hill's apologizing to the team. He doesn't get voted a captain. And it's just all this stuff that maybe in the moment we were like, oh, okay, we don't want to look too much into this, but now it's like, well, they look really bad. Like, they just look horrible. The Miami Dolphins look bad. Tua Tagovailoa. That was always the other part of it, Ian, too, when we were drafting Tyreek Hill, is that, okay, one, yeah, he's got to be good and he's got to come back, but Tua also has to be good at the same time, obviously. So for me, I'm a little bit worried about him, especially if you took him third round. That was his ADP. And there were question marks with all those receivers in that range, right? You had DJ Moore, you had Tyreek Hill. There were some other guys in that range. So you're just trying to pick the best guy with a red flag on him. But this one looks like it might not work out. I'm definitely worried about him.
And I'm happy you brought up the Tua things. I mean, I sent a tweet at one point saying Tyreek might start a fight with Tua on the sideline, and I wouldn't blame him. It was so bad watching Tua, again, throw those atrocious interceptions and just really fail to look anything at all like the guy that we saw putting up big-time numbers a few short years ago. So, again, very disappointed to see what this Dolphins offense has turned into. Right now, it is pretty much Devin Achane or bust for me in Miami. Yeah. That said, Kendall, let's turn some of these frowns upside down and talk about some real or Fugazi players who had some good week ones, and maybe, just maybe, we're expecting bigger and even better things down the stretch. Shout out to Jets QB1 Justin Fields. Again, just an awesome game and a losing effort, sure, against the Steelers, but was great to see him again hate down on some of those doubters and just be able to actually throw the football, which, if you were listening into Jets training camp, didn't seem like a possibility. So I went back and watched all of his dropbacks this morning, Kendall. And again, I was expecting to see plenty of he puts so much stress on the defense with how fast he is getting out of the pocket. And there was plenty of that, but you also saw him moving up and just keeping his eyes downfield, actually throwing the ball over the middle with accuracy and timing. Now, it was just 1 week, okay? So 4 years worth of him not being a great professional passer. It's not like those go out the window and we can only focus on this 60-minute sample size. But based on what we know about dual threat rushing quarterbacks, we were already content to say, hey, Justin Fields, as long as he is out there with a long leash, he's going to finish in the top 12. For me, just seeing his performance against a very tough TJ Watt-led defense, it just opens my eyes to the possibility that I do still think there's top 5 upside on the table here.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like we said, if you want a victory lap, a couple things, Emeka Egbuka, Justin Fields, I feel like is in that category this week, because he looked so good. And that's the reason why we said, hey, wait, if you need to wait on a quarterback and you missed out on the elite top guys, the top 5, including Joe Burrow, just wait for a guy like Justin Fields, because he gives you the rushing upside, the dual threat alien, like you like to say, Ian. So for me, we were always looking for the next kind of Jaden Daniels, and Justin Fields is not Jaden Daniels. Let's just say that, but a guy going in that range that could really give you that upside in fantasy. And that's exactly, to me, what Justin Fields did. And I think, Ian, the one thing I looked at when I went back is that he looked really comfortable too. Like, he's not looking over his shoulder and saying, okay, who's coming in to take my job? Is this really my job? Am I the QB1? I think they've instilled so much faith in Wilson that he is now going out there and he's saying, you know what, this is my team. I'm going to give it my best. Are we going to get weeks like this every single time? Probably probably not, Ian. And there's going to be times where you probably just want to turn off the television because it's not going to be pretty. But 29.5 fantasy points to start things off. And he got 16 of 22 for 218 yards. And he was really, really producing on the design carries. It's something that we love to see. We just know it might be a little bit of a roller coaster, but at least for this week and weeks moving forward, the legs that he has and everything that he's able to give you in fantasy, we're happy about it.
Now let's go ahead and get him another wide receiver already, okay? I want Chris Olave back with his Ohio State buddies here. I am tired of watching Josh Reynolds play football in the year 2025. But yeah, long story short,
Amen.
Justin Fields, someone that, again, you can start more comfortably than ever here, I believe, entering week 2. We kind of already talked up Keon Coleman. Again, it's a situation where love seeing one of these booms happen. I'm not going to pretend like all of a sudden we can trust Keon as a top 24 wide receiver. But hey, I was reading Dwayne's utilization report early. Make sure you guys check that out on Tuesday for free at fantasylife.com. And again, just a situation where when we have a full-time route rate, we now have evidence that Josh is willing to actually throw him the ball more than anyone. No, we're not going to get 46 passes from Josh every day. No, we're not going to get tipped pass turn touchdowns for Keon every day either. But again, boomer bust wide receiver 3, it'd make a lot of sense if he does put together some more booms in an offense that we love. Thoughts on Quentin Johnston though, Kendall? Because on the one hand, this is a former first-round pick, scored a lot of touchdowns last year, had himself a nice week 1. I thought Trey Harris and KOS were going to be bigger issues in terms of getting him the full-time route rate. They weren't. So, look, I want McConkey, I want Keenan, but Justin Herbert, I mean, he is one of these just absolute ballers. There's a reason why he always finds himself inside these top 5 real-life quarterback conversations. Playoff success notwithstanding, I understand that goes into it. But Quentin Johnston, again, a situation where I think it's pretty tough to rank, more than 50 wide receivers you want ahead of him this week.
I know, which doesn't that scare you, Ian? It terrifies me.
Very
like
much.
I'm terrified of it because what's always been the conversation, and it's been either we've tried to not make it funny, and at some points it does have to be funny where you just look and you're like, he can't catch the football. That's the only thing. That's what we looked at last season where you're like, is he actually going to come down with it? Does he have like butterfingers? What are we talking about here? That's the only thing that makes me terrified. Is like we've seen games from him like this before, and we've said, okay, finally this is it. So I'm excited for Quentin Johnston if he is able to put it together. Still a little hesitant, but like you said, we have to go off the data that we got from week 1 and the weeks prior once we start going into this season. And so if Quentin Johnston's going to be able to do it, 24.9 PPR points, you just can't ignore it. That's the other thing. If you have someone like him on the waiver wire, you're going to pick him up because you want to have a chance to get points like that week in and week out. I just still makes me nervous. And I'm trying not to be a QJ hater. Sorry, Quentin Johnston. We've just seen it before. So I'm hoping he's able to come through with it because it would be not only good for him, but good for Justin Herbert too in the end.
Justin Fields, we're leaning closer to real. Similar sentiment with Keon Coleman. A little bit more of a Fugazi here for Quentin Johnston. I'm somewhere in between, but I think I lean a little bit more real for our next one, Kendall, and that is Travis Etienne. $143 on the ground, chipped in there 13 yards receiving. I mean, he had that sweet 70-yard run where he did have to make some cuts at the line of scrimmage, opened up the Jets, and posted a 20.2 mile per hour top end speed. That is pretty legit in terms of looking at it across the NFL at the running back position. So I'm not guaranteeing he's going to be this far ahead of the other running backs moving forward, but man, that sort of performance wouldn't exactly, lend itself to him losing work. So Tank Bigsby, Bashaw Tootin, even LaQuint Allen, we got 4 guys there. But for right now, Kendall, again, ETN seems to be the answer in Jacksonville, and accordingly, that's an RB2 at least in the near term.
Yeah, if you drafted ETN, you're pretty happy. And I would lean with you on the side of that this is more real for the time being, right? That's just the other thing that I'm a little bit skeptical, and you just have to watch it week in and week out, because I don't think we'd be surprised if later on in the season, it turns into the committee that they were saying, a 3-headed monster. They drafted, I think, in my opinion, Bashaw Tootin for a reason, and they wanted that explosiveness. So I think Travis Etienne, though, from the performance that he gave, he's obviously going to continue to go out there, and it feels like Bashaw Tootin might get his chance. I took a good amount of Tank Bigsby, especially in underdog, just in case, because Ian, what we always talked about was that we wanted a piece of this backfield. If you were doing many drafts, just take one here, one there, one over there, because we just didn't really know what it was going to look like. But week 1 gives us answers all the time. And so it feels like Travis Etienne for now is their answer. So I'm leaning more towards real on that one too.
Always funny hearing some of the copium. And guys, I drafted a ton of baseball too. I hope it works out in the end, but it's not exactly the most encouraging data point. You can bring up Devon Achane being a healthy scratch in week 1 all you want. But guess what, guys? Usually when you're not getting fed the football early, I mean, it's not exactly, again, a great correlation that you're all of a sudden going to be taken over, particularly when ETN is looking good with his opportunities. So wouldn't cut the eyes with Tootin, but right now, again, looking far more like a handcuff as opposed to someone you'll be able to rely on anytime soon. Last one, Kendall, and of course, we had to save the best for last here. Kyle Pitts, he actually did it. Went out there and had himself a good week 1. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm kind of believing again, Kendall. He looked good out there. He actually looked big and athletic, which has not been the case over these past few years. I mean, some of the whip routes he was running was nice. He was picking up some yards after the catch. And above all else, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, they don't even have 2 functioning shoulders right now. So Kyle Pitts, they seem willing to use him as basically this underneath check down option, which is going to help keep that floor up. If we're also going to start getting some down the field work with Drake London and Mooney sideline, I don't know, Kendall. I have Kyle Pitts right now as my tight end 11 ahead of this next week. Again, it's a leap of faith. I know we've been hurt before. He looked good out there. I'm telling you guys. So, yeah, could he get hurt again and things could go down? Sure. But I'm cautiously optimistic, Kendall. Him and Penix golfed together all summer. It's paying off.
I don't know. I do. Here's the one thing. We have to just put aside our biases. I told you months ago, weeks ago even, that I would have 0% Kyle Pitts, and I do have 0% Kyle Pitts, Ian. So I'm taking the bet that I couldn't do it again. I'm sleeping like a baby, Ian. I'm not worried about it. You know, my mental health is in a better place. But you have to, put that aside, put a bias aside and say, yeah, he did look good week 1. So it's going to, where do you have him? Tight end 10? Is that what you said?
11. No, that's not crazy.
Ian.
Tight end 11.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, tight end 11. That's even better. But I'll have to look at. I haven't done my rankings yet this week, but it is true though. If we look at the injuries that they have, right, and Drake London, maybe he comes out and it's a Wednesday practice, a Thursday, and he says, you know what, I'm not good to go. We look at Darnell Mooney, who was day to day, week to week. I think he should be back kind of soon, but we're still waiting on him. So that does put Kyle Pitts in a situation where I might have to sit back and say, you know what? Kyle Pitts in week 2 might be someone ranked inside the top 12. Just maybe. I'm not there yet, Ian. I'm going to look around. I can't do it yet.
Just when we thought we were out, Kyle Pitts pulls us back in. And with that, everyone, it's going to rack up this edition of the Fantasy Live Show. If you like the show, then like the show. And always love when you guys manage to subscribe. It is free and it really does help us a lot. So appreciate tuning in as always. For Kendall, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again. Until next time, take care, everybody.